wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the healthy family podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Fuad Kassab.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's show. Today we've got a guest called Melissa Geerings, who's a herbalist and naturopath from Newcastle, who I met, and you get to hear the interview shortly. But before we get into the interview, I just wanted to mention something, because during the interview we had a bit of a conversation about mental health and antidepressants, and Melissa's view around antidepressants was that they do come in useful, and this is also a view that we share. And Jo, I know from your perspective, you dealt with Isaac with anti-anxiety medication when he was going through
Step first,
Yeah, and but it's always our personal view here, and this is not medical advice at all, but our personal view is that if something is wrong, we always try to look at the underlying cause of the disease. Unlike what we do with things like in Western medicine, where we take, say, antibiotics when we have an infection, and we'll do that just, for instance, to get over the infection. We sort of want to know why people get recurring infections, and we try to deal that with gut health. And that's always the stance that we take personally in our lives, that we always try to uncover the reason why our body is giving us a signal as to why things are going wrong. And we hold the view that if you're on antidepressants, of course, this is what you need to be on. But we also encourage you to take a holistic view towards your health and see if there's anything that you can do to improve your symptoms through approaching your health in a holistic fashion. So, Jo, I know we've recorded a podcast. I wasn't there for that one, but we have.
So we have talked about this in another podcast with Kelly Brogan, who is a psychiatrist in America, and she doesn't prescribe antidepressants to her patients, and she helps them to heal holistically. And if they are on antidepressants when they come to her, she helps them to slowly wean themselves off that and work through all the issues that are contributing to the anxiety and depression. So we have sort of got this viewpoint with Melissa today, and then we have another viewpoint with Kelly Brogan. So you might want to listen to both podcasts and to sort of, work out what's best for you. In my own situation, like most of you know, Isaac started off on some antidepressants when he was really bad with OCD, but it was never something that we wanted to do long term. We worked really hard to heal his gut so that he could come off those antidepressants, and he did within a year, and he hasn't had to go back on them, and it's been 2.5 years now. I think this is something that we thought we would just mention at the start of the podcast, because we want you to be aware that there is a lot of different viewpoints on this, and you'll hear different viewpoints on our podcast show, and it's good. It makes us think, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a controversial topic, and we shouldn't really be afraid of getting into these things, talk about them. And I'm really respectful of Melissa that she brought that kind of perspective onto the show. And this is a valid viewpoint. And what really we want to emphasize here more than anything is the fact that we believe that when we're having symptoms of sickness, that there's an underlying cause, and the best thing to do is to try to treat the underlying cause. And if sometimes the symptoms are too much to handle, then definitely we should be able to have symptomatic relief as well. So encourage you to take ownership of your health and to continue to strive for better health in your own lives. Hello everyone, and welcome to A Quirky Journey. This is your host Fuad Kassab, and with me my co-host Jo Whitten. Hi Jo.
Hello.
Today we have a special guest. They're all special guests, and today is an extra special guest because we've had her on the podcast twice now. You haven't heard the first time because the first time that we had her on, we failed to record correctly, so she's kindly agreed to come back onto the show to record the podcast again. And we're really excited to have her again because there's so many more questions to have. So today we've got nutritionist, naturopath, and herbalist Melissa Geering with us. Hello, Melissa. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. I'm recording.
Yeah, hey, we're all recording. We've got like 3 recordings going.
That's right.
We've got backups for our backups.
So I met Melissa at the Cindy O'Meara class that she was doing. She had a day course up in Newcastle a few months ago, and I went up with Lucy Lichtenstein, who's been on the podcast before, to talk about sleep. And on our lunch break, we went outside and we started having a chat, and I got to meet Melissa and to talk to her. And within a few minutes of talking to her, I realized that she's quite a special person when it comes to talking about health and nutrition. She shares similar views to what we talk about in the show in terms of whole foods and healthy eating. Of course, coming to the Cindy O'Meara class was one of the indicators that she shares this type of philosophy, and she wants to sort of learn more about it. So it was quite a great encounter to have someone with that kind of training and background to meet and to talk to and geek out with about herbs. And so we asked Melissa to come onto the show to talk about herbal medicine. First of all, welcome, Melissa. Thanks for coming back again onto the show. Apologies for the first time it went bad, and we hope this time it's going to be better. Melissa, do you want to share your story with us, how you came to become a nutritionist, naturopath, and herbalist, and about your background in that space?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again. I don't mind talking to you guys. It's not a chore, so it's not a worry. And what an awesome intro. Thank you. I think for me, I'll start from the start, I guess. I always, probably wanted to be a healer, but I went about it I say the traditional route, even though what I do now is more traditional, but into that mainstream medical kind of route through university. I studied nuclear medicine and pretty much hated every second of it. And so I knew that I wanted to work with people and I wanted to help, and I studied really hard in my HSC to get a good enough UAI to get into something medical related at university. And when you are at school, there's not really an option to I never even knew what a naturopath was, to tell you the truth, until I reached my 20s. And I think, one of the things that we really work on now in my industry is letting kids know that this is an option, for a vocation and for an occupation. But yes, I went to uni and I did that, and then, hated it, like I said, and ended up getting really sick from that and chronic fatigue and stuff like that. So because it's a really hard kind of, as you know, if you want to do anything in the medical industry, that tend to push you to the breaking point. Yes. So, anyway, ended up, one of my friends actually said to me, you should be a naturopath. And I was like, what is that? So I looked it up, and I called around a bunch of people in Newcastle at the time and said, can I just come and see what you do? And I got a bunch of no's at first. And I was like, oh, well, I don't really know if I want to do that if these people aren't even willing to, kind of talk to me about what they do. And I think traditionally there has been a lot of, defensiveness from naturopaths and my industry to the general public, and probably thinking that I was just somebody trying to make a fuss or, shed a negative light, which hopefully is starting to change with the new generation of us coming through. But finally somebody said yes, and I went in and seen what she did, and she actually straight away was like, you're not eating anywhere near enough, you're not eating the right kinds of foods, and this was just in a hour meeting where we kind of just were, chatting about what she did, and she was like, you look really anemic and all these kind of things that she just could see about me, and I was really underweight at the time. So
that sounds familiar to me.
Yeah, I fell in love with her immediately, and I was like, I want to do this, I want to be able to make these potions and some of the really cool stuff that she showed me she was doing at the time. And she was very traditional herbal medicine, which I still holds a huge place in my heart, even though I practice evidence-based medicine now. And then, I guess my journey with food started when I got a parasite from Bali in 2014, and again went down that same route. So my constitution's not very good if things aren't quite right for me in terms of food and taking care of myself. So when I got this parasite, it really kind of hit me really hard, and I had to, pretty much 1.5 to 2 years of getting rid of that and the same kind of symptoms as when I wasn't well. So I wrote a book on that, and that's really brought the nutrition aspect of what I do to the forefront now. So I do lots of food intolerance and things like that with my clients because of that experience. So that's probably where I've come from. And now I do dabble a bit of everything and write books and I'm in the clinic and I'm on social media a lot because that's a big part of it as well. So yeah, got to kind of be an all-rounder to be a naturopath these days.
Yeah, you sure do.
So is a naturopath someone who is sort of similar to a doctor but just uses natural medicine? Is there a bit more of a distinction between a naturopath and a Western trained doctor?
Yeah, I think that's probably a controversial question, Fuad, depending on how I answer it. If I go to a dinner party and somebody says, "Oh, what do you do?" I say I'm a herbalist, and they just kind of look blankly at me, and I say I'm a doctor, but I give people natural herbs instead of medicine, pharmaceuticals, and they go, "Oh, okay, cool." But know that if my naturopathic colleagues were listening, they would kick me because there is so much more that we do. So we spend a lot more time with people in terms of getting to know, what their body is all about in terms of a holistic approach and looking at their diet and looking at their lifestyle and not just looking at them from a presentation of symptoms, which I think a doctor, and no fault to them, but they only have 20 minutes if you're lucky with people. They, I've got a cold or flu, or I've got this infection, or I've got this or that. So it's very symptom-based and disease-based, whereas we kind of come at it from, we'll definitely cure the cold and flu, but why are you getting the cold and flu? Can we prevent it next time?
This is one thing I really noticed when I first went to a naturopath. I'd gotten so frustrated with not getting the help I needed, and every time I went to the doctor, I was rushed through. I remember going to the doctor one day, and as I was walking down the hall following him back to the room, he was looking behind him and looking at me as we were walking, saying, "So what's the matter? Like, hurry up, quick, tell me what's the matter." I'm thinking, my goodness, we haven't even got to the room yet. And he was in such a rush, and I just felt like I could never get the help I needed. And the first time I went to a naturopath, the appointment was like an hour and a half. And he checked my hair, he checked my nails, he checked my eyes, he talked to me about everything I eat and everything I do. And I was just like, what in the world?
Isn't his job to answer the question, what's the matter? Like, he shouldn't be asking that. He should be answering that.
That's right. He looked at me and told me what was the matter. And it was so funny because he changed my diet. And every time I went in to see him, I'd think, I really hope he doesn't figure out that I've been eating wheat. And he'd look in my eyes and go, "You've been eating such and such." I'd be like, he can always tell.
Wow, that's incredible.
So, totally different. Couldn't hide.
There's still a little bit of magic to what we do, I think, in herbology and in herbal medicine. So I love that. I really love that.
So in terms of the training that you get as a herbal medicine practitioner, can you illuminate us with what you studied?
Yeah, so there's not much that we don't look at. And in terms of ongoing study, it is continuous. Like, I finished my bachelor degree this year, and then most of us go into a master's degree as well. So we're always kind of studying. But initially you get an advanced diploma, and being a naturopath is actually 3 separate advanced diplomas. So it's an advanced diploma in herbal medicine, one in nutritional medicine, and one in naturopathy. And then you normally have to do a component of either massage or homeopathy as well to round off that naturopathy kind of degree. So, when we do herbal medicine, we study hundreds of herbs, and we don't use them all every day, but certainly, you need to know the botanical names of each, what family that's from, the constituents of each, and that goes into a lot of depth. And we also then do the study of pharmaceuticals and, pharmacodynamics and how our drugs, the drugs that are commonly used, are affected by herbs or vice versa and things like that. So lots of anatomy and phys and, lots of, we look at all the biochemical testing as well, so that we know how to read testing and how to refer people for that. And it's quite in-depth and comprehensive, but actually at the end of this year is the last year that we'll actually do a teach out of advanced diplomas. So I teach the college in Newcastle, and we'll teach out advanced diplomas. We will only be able to study a bachelor degree of naturopathy coming in 2018, which I think is so exciting because it really raises the bar for us because we are healthcare practitioners. And I think it's really important that our education is at a higher level, and the bachelor degree will do that.
That's good.
One thing that I want to focus on is the nutrition aspect and the nutritional aspect and the naturopath work is really the herbs side of things. Because since we last spoke, I've actually gone and bought 3 books about herbal medicine, and I've been immersed in that world, and I've been reading a lot about it, and it's fascinating to me, and I'll share my thoughts throughout this podcast. But first of all, for our listeners who don't know about drugs and plants, can you talk to us about the relationship between drugs that we commonly have in pharmacies and plant equivalents, and the historical relationship between plants and drugs?
Yeah, for sure. I have to ask, have you got Green Pharmacy by Barbara Griggs?
No.
There's another book he's going to put on his list.
Get out there and get that.
What's it called?
It's Green Pharmacy by Barbara Griggs. She is amazing. So she wrote this fantastic book, and I actually took a lot of her influence to write my first aid book when I made my first aid kit, because she really talks about where we've come from and how every single doctor and every single pharmacist used to be a herbalist. It was that simple. We only had plants to use as medicine before we started isolating constituents and putting them into the pharmacy, pharmaceuticals that we use now. And a lot of the pharmaceuticals that we use originated from a plant constituent. So as a herbalist, there's a philosophy of using a whole plant, a whole herb, whatever part that might be, but we don't separate it. So we take turmeric, for example, and use that whole turmeric herb, whereas, and there's a huge crossover between supplements and pharmaceuticals at the moment, because they will take one kind of ingredient. When I say constituent, I'm referring to an ingredient. Say if you have 30 ingredients in your cake and you take one ingredient out, certainly that ingredient isn't going to function as it would if it was with all the others to make a cake. So when we look at turmeric, they take the curcumin out of it and isolate it, and it becomes more potent, more volatile, so can have different effects and can have side effects as well. So a great example of that, herbal versus pharmaceutical, is white willow. White willow bark we still use for pain relief. I've got some in my own dispensary, and I love it, and I use it all the time. But what they did was take aspirin out of white willow and use that as a pain reliever. We all have heard of aspirin or used it in the past. It works quicker. It's fantastic for pain, but we know that if you take aspirin, long term, or don't have it with food, that it can cause ulcers in the tummy because it kind of burns it. So that's a really good example of the volatility of something when it's taken out of its whole form.
So this is actually the perfect thing to talk about, because when you mentioned this last time on the podcast, that's what really got my mind going. Because after we hung up, I was thinking about this idea of like white willow being something that doesn't cause the side effects that aspirin does. And I went in to have a look at white willow online. I searched as much as I can, and I found out that what happens is within the white willow bark there are these tannic compounds, basically the bitter chemicals within the bark, which if you have white willow tincture, you'll taste them. These tannins are protective to the gut lining. And then the white willow bark also still has the active compound of aspirin, which is salicylic acid. Is that correct, Melissa?
Yeah.
All right. So I flipped out when I read that, because this is the thing for me that I've heard about white willow bark before, and usually the conversation happens in the other direction from the perspective of Western medicine. And they say, well, back in the day, people used to just take white willow bark and boil it down and drink it for pain relief, but sometimes they could overdose on it because they didn't know the exact dosage. Every tree was different, and sometimes people could just have way more than they need, and it could cause like issues for them. Now, we take out the aspirin out of it, and we can have measured, certain amount of micrograms or doses, and then it's so much safer for you. But this is the cool thing about the what you're saying is modern herbal medicine will take something like white willow bark. It will get it as a whole food, so it'll boil the entire bark, and it'll get all the thousands of compounds that exist within that bark, of which we only know the active compound to be salicylic acid, but we don't know actually if there's other stuff because we haven't studied 1,000 compounds. And then together we mix them together. We don't mix them. We have it in the tincture, and when we have that, it's like a whole food. It's like eating, say, a sweet potato or eating like an apple versus drinking apple juice. And we all know that apple juice causes a lot of blood sugar fluctuations and all these detrimental issues. But then when you have it in whole food, it doesn't have those effects. But then add on top of this the ability for us now to have really measured herbal medicine extractions. Like we have white willow bark, which you can give from your dispensary, which we know exactly it contains this much per milliliter of salicylic acid.
Everything that I use has a dosage range, and that is from thousands of years of anecdotal evidence and all of our clinical research as well. So when I said before I practice evidence-based medicine, it is, hey, this willow bark has been used at this dose to treat headaches in this cohort of people. So
sorry?
Oh, I was going to say, yes. So we have dosage, which
this is the big thing here, because one of the things to really avoid herbal medicine is like the complete randomness of extractions would have been a cause for concern. If people are dealing with highly potent plant extracts and they don't know the dosage, they could certainly be harmful, because the difference between like a poison and a drug and food is really the dosage. And if we go too high on anything, it might be detrimental for us. So it's fantastic to see that, with your practices, we have these ability, like these dosed medicines that we can take, which, like, I'll see a pendulum swing back towards the herbal medicine route if people start realizing this, because they'll see that it offers actually the best of both worlds. Like, it gives you a whole food, it gives you something that protects you wholly. Like, the plant will give you everything that you need for the active function of that plant to take place within you. But at the same time, it's completely safe, because we know how much you're getting every time, which is a concern that people have had ingrained in them out of the Western medicine view. So this blew my mind, and it just got me thinking about all these things that we've been avoiding having as plants in our lives, just out of that fear. And there's just so many. There's 500,000 plant species on this planet, and that so it's just an amazing world to explore and to start looking into. So maybe can you talk to us about some of your favorite plants that you use and how you use them?
Yeah. I think 2 points. It's completely safe if it's prescribed by somebody who has, done the work to be able to prescribe it. Like, you can buy some of these herbs off the shelf and they may not necessarily be suitable for people, and, the drug interactions, if they are on other medication. I think that's an important point from my clinical perspective.
Yeah, of course.
There's a huge, I think the general public thinks all herbal medicine is safe sometimes, and, I think it's still medicine. We need to respect that, definitely. And the other thing is, it would be very rare for people to overdose on a true white willow herb because of that bitterness, and because when we taste it we go, oh, that's enough, like that's quite bitter. And traditionally we know that wasn't a food that you would have a lot of. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, because it indicates like a dosage for us. Usually we can detect bitterness because it's usually toxic. When we have something extremely bitter for us, we avoid it.
A shaman or a medicine man or woman who would A, know that already probably, but also B, have some idea of what that was based on when they tasted each plant. So if it came from a different tree, then they would know that one was stronger than the last cultivation had. But herb-wise, I think I always find this really difficult. Last time you asked me, I was like, the herb, I have probably have 2 dispensaries and 100 herbs between them. But I always I just try to think of the ones that I get in like a big 2.5 litre because I go through them so much. So it would definitely be licorice. And when I tell someone I'm putting licorice in their mix, they tend to either they have it's got a polarizing effect, they screw their nose. I hate licorice confectionery candy stuff, or I love licorice. Either way, it's not the licorice that people think because, the lolly is mostly just sugar and some aniseed flavour. So true licorice is this, thick, beautiful, sweet, black herb that has been shown in clinical research to reduce cortisol. So we know that's one of our stress hormones. So it's fantastic for adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue and all those kind of things. And it's also blood pressure balancing. So it's great for people with low blood pressure or a bit of dizziness and that kind of thing.
So when you say balancing, can you just explain a little bit more? So if you've got high blood pressure, what happens then? Does it bring it down?
We tend to avoid it due to safety. We don't know. With some of our herbs, we say they're balancing or they're modulating, but we don't really know how that works. The herbs have an affinity for certain, disease states or symptoms and things like that. And some we know, we've researched and we know the constituents and we know the dynamics of it in the body, and some we don't. So for licorice, for example, we would avoid it in high blood pressure, but certainly in low blood pressure, I would use it. And, if their blood pressure had stabilized, it's really safe. And, there are huge, famous, very successful herbalists who will say that you would have to have the entire 2.5 litres of licorice in one go to have an effect or to affect that high blood pressure. Right. So it's the same with St. John's wort and antidepressants. Like St. John's wort, one of my favourite herbs to use, and it's one of the most well-known herbs in the general public and in the medical association as well. So it's attacked quite a lot. But, there's the idea that St. John's wort will cause harm to somebody on antidepressants is also, fought in with the big wigs in herbal medicine. They say that it will not have that effect, but for safety reasons, we avoid it. So we're very respectful of that, and we don't want to harm anyone. And there's probably 15 other herbs that I could use for depression anyway, so we're very, wary of that. But yeah, we do. That word balancing is not exacting. It's not an exacting science still.
Because I read... Oh, sorry.
No, go.
Go on, Joe. No, that's all right.
Okay. I remember when I first started going to the naturopath, my blood pressure was really low. And, I had licorice in mine. And within about 2 weeks, things leveled out. I'm not sure what else he put in there. Can't remember. But it really helped.
Yeah, so maybe that's also a good point to talk about. It took you 2 weeks to see benefit out of this, whereas typically with other medicines it's something that's instant. Melissa, maybe you can tell us how people should be approaching herbal medicine and not to confuse them with the effects of Western medicine.
Yeah, I guess for me, I would expect to see something happen for you, Joe, something positive in a couple of days. And then, yes, certainly it'll take a little bit longer for us to get some really good holistic benefits. For anything hormonal, we say, I'd say 3 months, up to 3 months. But if you come in with a specific symptom like fatigue or heavy bleeding, I would expect to see that benefit within a couple of days. I can definitely reduce that bleeding in a couple of days to a day even, and we can give people a bit more energy in a couple of days. We can get people better sleep in a night or two. So that misconception that herbs are going to take ages to work, certainly not. And I think it takes a really good practitioner for when that person comes back after a week to decipher, because we're really busy and we just, we take our herbs and we keep going on with life and we get caught up in it all. But, when people come back to that first follow-up, that's always my favorite, most exciting time because, I go back to the really specific stuff that they told me and they go, oh, yeah, well, that was gone the next day, or that I felt better after 2 days, or like yesterday, blood pressure was perfect,
It's a bit vague to me because it was about 12 years ago.
And that, that's
but
really fine.
But I do remember the first visit, like you say, the differences because he did the live blood analysis and you could just see the difference. It's amazing.
Yeah. So I'll share a story that happened after the podcast. Jo came to visit in Sydney with her family, and I took them to a trip to the Blue Mountains. And we were in Katoomba and walking around, and I see this herbalist shop just above the street level, and I'm like, I'm gonna call them and get some white willow bark off them. So I called up and I said, hi, do I need an appointment? Because I'm just after some white willow bark. I just wanted, a friend has told me it's good for pain. I'm going to try it out. She said, no, that's fine. I can give you, some white willow bark. So I went and got some tincture from her. And she said, take, half a teaspoon twice a day. So I took that, and I have scoliosis, which causes aches and pains in my body that I've lived with for years. Then not, terrible, but they're quite uncomfortable. And I started experiencing within an hour this improvement in my body. I was just feeling so much better, so much more relief. My body just relaxed a little bit more, because when you have pain, you sort of hold yourself in certain ways where you try to avoid certain positions. And it just felt fantastic. And then for the next few days, I was taking it. The pain was really well modulated. It didn't disappear. It was much better. And also what I noticed is back in the day when I used to be really sick, I used to have systemic acne that covered my entire body from head to toe, really. And that went away with a whole food diet, and I only have remnants of that now, and it's sort of on my face, around my beard, and it's not a lot, maybe 2 or 3 bits of acne that come up. I find them hard to go away. They're almost always there, but the rest of my body is fine. And I thought, all right, maybe these are remnants of being sick all this time, and having gut issues that haven't completely resolved themselves. And then within 2 or 3 days of taking the white willow, the acne started going away, and I just couldn't believe it. It just started, the pain went and the acne went, and I was feeling really great in my body, and I just felt I'd found this amazing plant that it would just be so helpful for me in my life to just, be without pain and not to worry about acne anymore. It was just absolutely fantastic, and I fell in love with this plant. I still have a little bit of that tincture sitting next to me on my desk. I haven't touched it. I finished it, but I've just left a little bit there just because I want to remind myself to get some more. And every once in a while, I'll go. I've got to get some more out of this stuff, and it's just been a big win for me. First of all, thank you for pointing me in that direction, but it's just amazing to me that a plant like that can have so many effects. Both the acne and the pain went away, Melissa. So can you maybe talk a little bit about how it can have various effects, how plants are just more holistic than what a medicine would usually do?
Yeah, so it's obviously treated systemic inflammation.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, and it's just taken all that inflammation down for you. What I'd say to you is, imagine if we sat for an hour and you told me everything, and
I'm thinking that.
I've heard that, that's one herb that's treating this symptom. The amount of things that we can do with inflammation and all of that leftover toxicity and stuff like that, without, no offense.
Sorry?
Telling you you're toxic.
No, I'm well aware of that. See, this is the thing. I'm very happy to acknowledge the fact that my body still needs a lot of work, and to me, it's great to know that, because it sort of reminds me where I've come from and where I am now and where I need to go. So I don't mind having pain in my body. I don't mind having a few skin problems, because they're just a good reminder to keep learning more and digging deeper.
Not get too
Otherwise,
complacent.
I think that's right. If I got too comfortable, I'd probably just not look into it anymore. But this stuff keeps me going, and I love it, so it's fine.
I'm very comfortable, and I'm not in pain. I say people, pain is a sign that there's something wrong. It's your body's only way of talking to you. You might have pain, it might have burping, you might have bloating. These symptoms are your body talking to you. That's all it can do. It doesn't have its own mouth. We only use a mouth for our brain, really, to convey what we're thinking. So that's a sign that something's not quite right. And even, period pain is not normal. Nobody has to have period pain. There's a sign that something's congested or stuck or, something's not quite right. So we can work with that. So I think, that was one herb. And I think the benefits of having a holistic mix, because even to some extent we call one herb simple. So what you had was a simple of white willow, and it's called a simple because A, it's one herb, and B, it's simple. It treats one symptom or, two symptoms. It doesn't treat you holistically, and it doesn't relieve or find the underlying factors that are causing the issue. And certainly we'd always keep that white willow in there because you responded so well. But, we could definitely, chuck some more beautiful herbs in with everything.
Can I ask? Sorry?
No, I just wanted to talk about just extending this point. Is in the books that I've been reading, they were talking about how herbs actually they mediate repair at the cellular level rather than what medicines that we're used to. Like they kind of mute the body's pain. They mute things rather than causing any kind of true healing. And that plants actually do cause healing, and this is something that is like quite amazing to me. Like if you really sit down and think about it, that it promotes the body's ability to heal itself. And I don't think that's talked about enough, because we don't have any real healing medicines in Western medicine apart from some, say, antibiotics, but like they don't really heal you. Because they actually, you come out worse in some instances as well. But maybe you can talk a little bit about how they promote this kind of healing.
Foods, herbs. I love the idea of a holistic food, approach to healing. And herbs are definitely food because they're safe, plants that we can ingest. But they're so medicinal plants are so much more than just food. And like I said, I'm a huge advocate of whole foods and all that kind of stuff and foods for healing. But I think sometimes we just need something a little bit stronger or something a little more. What's the word I'm looking for? Targeted, I guess. And when you look at herbal medicine, like I said, it has to be respected because it can do damage. And if you take the wrong herbs that aren't for you or, that contraindicate with your conditions or your medications, then they can harm you because of this potency, because of the way we extract them, because of the way we know exactly what part of the plant to use and how to extract that. Each part is extracted differently. And then it's we make sure that it has that all the active constituents that we are aware of are in there. We assay them to make sure that we can, provide an exacting dose each time. So I think, yes, I always talk about herbs being the ultimate food in terms of healing and telling the body what it needs and providing the body. So, we can provide nutritive herbs as well, like, if the iron is low or whatever it might be. And I find that they work so much more holistically and for longer than if I gave someone a supplement of iron. So does that answer your question? I think that, I just think that herbs they're food, but they're so much more than food, and they balance, I'll use that word again, they balance, they modulate, they heal, they don't fix or cover up, the issue.
I really
that's an excellent thing to know, really. Joe, go on. Yeah.
I really like what Mary Kelly says about food and supplements and things. She said, when you're healing the gut, like the food is foundational, but the supplements and the herbs and things, they're like the cherry on top, and sometimes you just need that.
Absolutely. Sometimes you don't need the cherry and sometimes you do, and your life will, throughout your life you'll go up and down, and you'll have those times when you need it and you need some extra support, and then you'll have, you might have 6 years, 10 years where you're really healthy and fine, and then you get this, thing happen and you need relaxing. You need some herbs again. And people who've been sick. Oh, sorry.
So you go.
People who've been sick, chronically sick in the past or unwell for a long time, they've had something, happen with their health. They often need it for a bit longer.
Kind of kickstarts things too, doesn't it?
We need to get them back to health.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's a bit harder, but yeah.
When I was so sick, like about 12 years ago, and I first started going to the naturopath, what I wanted was, because I'd never been able to get the help I needed with my diet, the doctors and nutritionists just really hadn't helped me there, even though I knew deep down that there was something that you could do with diet, surely. So when I went to the naturopath, he really focused on that, but then also the herbs. And he said, once you are going really well and your body's balanced out, then you can pull back on the herbs and just use, as you need it. But that's how you need to get it started so that it all happens a lot quicker. Otherwise, it'll be a long time of healing. And yeah, I did see changes so quickly, like you said earlier.
Yeah, and that's always our goal, is to get people to a well place so that changes that we make around the herbs or the supplements, can keep doing the work once we've, kind of built the stepping stones, I guess.
Yeah.
Built you back up again.
Yeah.
Melissa, you have 2 dispensaries, and obviously the one is more like in the city than the other one. And can you tell us where they are, first of all, where your dispensaries are?
Yeah, so in Newcastle, Newcastle is Newcastle, and then we have Macquarie, which is a suburb next to it. But
okay. You mentioned that you have different clientele who come to both, and they come to you with very different problems. Like you see similarities across the line and in the needs for each area, and they're quite drastically different. Can you talk to us about what you see them experiencing and what the differences are?
So one is in the suburbs and one is in the city, and they're literally 20 minutes apart. But when I opened Hamilton last year, the difference in the clientele that I saw was so interesting and eye-opening for me, because in the suburbs, and I should preface by saying that my suburb clinic at Warners Bay is in a gym. So I tend to attract healthy people. They're already going to the gym. They might be going to yoga. They might be seeing the physios there, whatever. And they tend to be really healthy, I guess, health-minded, eating all these great foods and stuff like that, and just need a little bit of reworking, or they have these underlying conditions that they want to treat, and that's fine. And then when I moved into the city, I started getting these really kind of sick people, and mostly it's because they're all coming from the offices. They're working in the city, which, as you get further into Newcastle, it does get a little bit more toxic, because we have a huge, kind of coal mining industry here. So they're breathing, the air that they're breathing is different. I live in Newcastle City, and I can literally run my finger along my kitchen bench top and get black coal dust. We're breathing that in every day. And the office workers are just a whole other kettle of fish, really. They're often sickly. Their immune systems are low. They're working, I had a client in yesterday. She's working a 12-hour day and then going home and working as well. So they're overworked, they're stressed, often their mental health is suffering. And so, I just found that I needed different herbs. And actually I do a lot more sleep tonics at my city clinic, because people therefore aren't sleeping very well. It's that whole cycle. And then just
thing.
Yeah, it goes into their whole life. Yeah. So definitely different there. It's very interesting.
You also have a first aid kit, like a medical herbal first aid kit. Can you talk to us about that one?
Yeah, I was so excited to make this. So one of my motivations for that, I guess, and it's a key naturopathic principle, is to kind of educate the community that you live in to be able to heal themselves naturally, and to do this, some of the more acute medicine and the minor medicine at home, so that every time we have a cold, we don't go and get antibiotics. And every time, somebody burns themselves, or they get some bruises, or, whatever it might be, have a bit of bloating or tummy aches and stuff like that, they don't have to wait to come and see me. They can treat themselves, and they can treat their family really safely at home with some simple tonics. Yeah. So, if you read Green Pharmacy, you know, this is a big part of what she is passionate about as well, and that's, you know, putting that education back in the hands of the public. And you know, I think what's happened with medicine is that's really been taken off us, and our autonomy has been taken away, and that's something that as a naturopath you try to bring to every single client. You give them back their autonomy over their health. We educate them. We allow them to make the choices. So nearly every consult I'm finding myself saying, okay, we have a couple of options here, you know, and I'll put it back in their hands because it's their health. And it has to be something that they can do and they can sustain and that they want to do, you know. I can't tell somebody that they can't eat this or they can't eat that. And then, you know, they go home and they're still eating that, and they come back for their follow-up and they go, oh, no, I stopped eating that. Like, they have to be comfortable and it has to be doable and they have to, you know, go home and do it and not feel like they have to lie to me. So I created, this first aid kit, and it's just got some really simple, safe tonics. Like, you know, it has a pain relieving tonic, which has willow and turmeric in it, actually, which can be used for period pain or headaches or all those kind of minor aches and pains, arthritis, stuff like that. And it has the tummy tonic, which is, you know, gets rid of bloating or what I call accidental ingestion. So if you are intolerant to gluten, for example, and you accidentally have some, or some idiot gives you gluten at the cafe and it's said gluten-free, then, you know, you can have a little bit of this tonic and it moves it through and stops it stagnating, stops the bloating. It's great for IBS and stuff like that. And it has bruise cream, which is arnica cream. It has calendula cream, which is super versatile for kids and, you know, nappy rash and itchy bites and things like that. I think it has like 6 tonics, 2 creams, and I've got some. I really hate that alcohol stuff that you get from the hospital stuff. You know, you do your hands with it. Yeah,
alcohol wash. Yeah.
So I put a natural version of that in as well. We made with grapeseed extract. So yeah, people just have some options when, you know, if they're at home, they can pull that out. And sure, you could chuck some Nurofen in there. You could chuck some, you know, other bits and pieces, like some of that more normal basic first aid, because I really believe in both types of medicine. And, you know, part of my path may be to study medicine at some stage, which I'm really passionate about. It's just deciding whether to undertake that 10-year kind of, you know, huge thing. But yeah, like I really am a fan of pharmaceuticals. I'm a huge fan of antidepressants in particular. So I'm very respectful of that. And you can certainly use both medicines, you know, that you don't have to be one way or the other. So the beautiful thing about the first aid kit is you can personalize it as well. And you can add different herbs and you can add different pharmacy stuff as well. So yeah, that's where that kind of come from. Oh, and I wrote a really cool book so you can read all about how the herbs work.
Tell us what the book's called.
Oh, that's a little one with the first aid kit. It's just called Naturopath.
Okay.
It comes with it, yeah. So it's just this little book, and it tells you what is in each tonic and how that works, and why I put it in there, kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I keep meaning to get that.
So fantastic. So look, there's a point I want to sort of talk about, because this is not something that we I imagine we'd get into now, but since you mentioned it, and typically we've had other people come on the show to talk about these things in particular, like Dr. Kelly Brogan. She came and talked about antidepressants, and she had a completely different view to you around, you know, she thought that they were actually quite bad for people to take, and especially as a long-term intervention, and her job as a doctor, she was prescribing them, and then now she's trying to get people off them as in her practice, and that's what she does. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her work, but she was one of the speakers at the Mind Forum. She's the keynote speaker at the Mind Forum last year. I'm just interested in your take on antidepressants and why you're such a big fan of them. You know, typically in the natural medicine world, they're viewed with quite a bit of skepticism. So love to hear what you like so much about them.
Yeah, I think I was definitely of that opinion when I first started practicing, and I was like, you know, going to save the world and get everybody off antidepressants and put them on herbs. And the more that I worked through my clinic and with my clients, the more I saw that wasn't going to help people. I see antidepressants save people's lives, and I work with some really fantastic doctors who, I'll give people 2 weeks on herbs, and if that's not enough, then they're straight to my doctor colleagues, and they're getting some medicinal help, because it's not something that I'm willing to risk people's lives for. And I think it's such a serious serious thing to be playing with, and I'm not qualified enough to go further with that like the doctor would be. And certainly if there was other options, I would do it. But at this stage, if I can put somebody on a low dose antidepressant and then completely, support or negate all of those side effects, any and all of the side effects that they have with herbs, which I do very well, then I think that they're a lifesaver, and I think that they are really important medicine for us to have access to.
So do you feel that there's something that, apart from being a short-term intervention, there should be something that a person would use as a lifelong medicine, like they have issues with depression or anxiety and things like that?
Yeah, I do see that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've worked with many of my clients are on different kind of medications, but I've worked with people to take them off antidepressants, and sometimes that's successful and it works really well, and they keep going on with their herbs. But sometimes it hasn't been, and we've had to go back to the antidepressants. But it is always at a lower dose with herbs than they would need if they didn't have herbs. So I have a peace of mind with that, because, I think the issues with antidepressants do seem to start once they go over a certain dose, and that's really individual for each person, and it depends on the actual antidepressant as well. So there are some that I'm really comfortable working with, and my doctor colleagues, we will talk about that. And then there's others that obviously I'm not comfortable with them going on if it's, their first time on antidepressants, and we just need a little bit of help and sometimes that little bit of help is just to allow the herbs to have a chance to kick in. So yeah, it can be short term, but yeah, I think for me, I see people say that, this medicine, it makes a difference in my life every day, and I don't plan to go off it. And it's something that I'll counsel my clients on as well, because there's a lot of fear around staying on antidepressant. And then if that's 5 milligrams of Lexapro, and you're taking herbs and you've got all the support, like you may need some supplements as well, because we know that they deplete a few nutrients. But if you can be really well on that, I don't see any reason why we can't do that for people.
Yeah, all right. That's a really good point, and I haven't really actually thought about sort of you integrating it into a more holistic perspective. It's not something that I consider. I don't actually personally have any experience with any of these drugs, but a lot of people in our community, and so does Jo in her family. But yeah, it's an interesting take on sort of trying to sort of allow them to stabilize a person until either the herbs kick in, or if they're at a low enough dose where the side effects are minimal and can even be mitigated by the herbs or supplements or whatever it is that you take. That's an interesting. I'll take that away and have a think about it. Yeah,
we found
because like my preference is always to sort of avoid pharmaceuticals because of their isolate qualities, and they haven't been in use in human history for a long time, whereas food has been we've been eating food for as long as we've been human, even longer. So that's usually like where I like to sort of focus on in terms of our healing. But yeah, for intervention, I think that sounds like an okay plan for a short term. Jo, that's been your experience as well. You took some.
Well, we used it for my son with his OCD and anxiety and depression. For it was an intervention, definitely. And then we got straight into the gut healing. And when he had worked through gut health and was doing a lot better with that, he was able to come off the antidepressants slowly. And at first I was thinking, it's the antidepressants.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you hear me?
Jo?
Yeah?
Jo. All right. Repeat from the start. Say, talk about how you were doing, Isaac took the antidepressant. It cut off from that point. So just start from the top about Isaac.
Okay. So when my son Isaac's OCD got really bad, I took him to the doctor and he was put onto antidepressants, just a very low dose. And straight away we went on to the GAPS diet and started working through that. And it was really amazing to see how quickly he improved. But I thought at first, what if it's just the antidepressants? You know, it was worrying me that if we took him off the antidepressants, he would just go back to where he was. And I talked to a psychologist about it, and she said, no, actually, usually by, I can't remember how many months it was, maybe 3 or 4, maybe 6. She said usually by this time the doctors doubled the dose of the antidepressants, but because of all the work that you're doing, it's been able to stay at a low dose. She said it's not just the antidepressants. And then after another, say, 5 months, I think it was less than a year, and he was able to go completely off his antidepressants, and he hasn't been back on, and that's been a year and a half, I think, that he's been off. So, I mean, I think it's different for everyone, obviously, but I was just so happy to have him off them because I just didn't really know what the long-term results could be. And just like he does have to be careful with his diet or his anxiety levels go back up again with the inflammation. And I do find with my other son, he has to take supplements or else he gets the anxiety. So, yeah, I can see how I always say to people, I think, like, don't go off the antidepressants and then do gaps or start supplements to try and get well. Start working on both at once and then see what happens because, you know, we did find, like, just an encouragement for people listening, we did find healing still with the antidepressants. Like, people get the idea if you're taking the antidepressants, maybe you won't get better. But, if you want to mention anything about that, Melissa, because I've had that question yesterday, actually. People thinking that if they take the medication, then the gut health work won't actually work, but it did for us.
That's completely untrue. There's no reason why all that work won't still be, you know, functional, all of that food. Like, there's no reason why. And sure, throw some extra gut bacteria, throw some probiotics, some beautiful healing fermented foods, all that kind of stuff in if you're worried about possible minor die-off of, you know, the bugs or that effect on the liver. But even herbal medicine takes a toll on the liver. So these are made to process toxins. I mean, that's what we have a liver for. That's what we have kidneys for. That's what we have skin for, you know. So, I think what you said is key. You absolutely, like, I will never go down the road of helping someone go off their antidepressants if they have not got underlying herb supplement food support. Yeah. I just won't go there if they're not willing to do those things.
They're just going to go back to where they were.
Yeah, I won't work with their doctor and they will get sicker. But also I think a really good important point is that the antidepressants are still affecting a change. They're not just covering, you know, they're not just, you know, tricking people into thinking they're happy or that kind of thing. They're absolutely still affecting a change in the biochemistry of the brain. So that works for some people. It doesn't work for others, and it's so individual and it depends on the medication, and all of these factors come into play. For myself, antidepressants were possibly the worst thing that I ever tried. But for my husband, that's what keeps him here every day with me. So, you know, it's really personal it's so individual.
Melissa, can you tell us about the book that you've just released and where people can find it, where they can find you, where they can learn more about what you do and how to get in contact with you?
Of course. So we released a book last year, Simply Balanced, and it's all about simple, balanced food and just having a good balance of macronutrients and whole healing foods with everything that you eat, you know, really looking at your plate and, you know, thinking, does this serve me? Is this food alive? You know, is this meal balanced and you know, is going to get me through the day, I guess. So that, I guess, I actually wrote it too because of food intolerances, which, you know, I forget by now because it feels like so long ago. I wrote it because of food intolerances. My experience with all of my clients, I started kind of, didn't set out to write a cookbook, started writing recipes for every single client who came in with these food intolerances. And yeah, so I put them all in this Word document and I'd email it to them, you know, and change things for different people. Oh, yeah, but it took me forever. and then I had people ask for pictures. They wanted, like, photos of it.
People don't like cooking without pictures, we've found.
Yeah. the other thing is I'm no chef, so I was going, put a handful of this in and, a couple of handfuls of that.
That's how I started too.
Yeah, and so that actually took months to work out and fit for the cookbook. That's another story. But they were going, well, what's a handful? Like people like to follow recipes and they want to make it the same. And some people, food's my passion. I'm a foodie no matter what. I'll be a foodie at heart. So for me, that was okay. But people who maybe their forte is numbers, they're an accountant or are picking on accountants. But, they're better at other things. So they just want a recipe they can follow and it's fail-safe. So we wrote the recipe book Simply Balanced, and I've sold my first batch, which was really nice. We're just about to order a second batch, which is very exciting. And then had the book launch 2 weeks ago. But because we'd already sold them all, actually pre-sold my second book, which comes out in April, which is all kind of gut healing and what of stuff I talk about, working from a different perspective, but looking at rather than soups and, that traditional kind of gut healing route, looking at using a whole animal from, nose to tail, awesome. And what stuff we can get from that animal in terms of gut healing and, nutrition. So it's kind of an ethical approach, I guess, to meat eating as well.
That's good.
When does that come out, Melissa?
Well, they can pre-order it on my website. So
okay.
All this stuff's on my website, first aid kit, books, all that kind of stuff. So
comes out in April though, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll have copies. Yeah. So the pre-order is really we do like a pre-order to, I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, we did too.
Yeah, self-publishing is hard work and it's very expensive.
Yes.
So we give people a discount if they pre-order because it helps me to order the books. So I'm very thankful of all that support. So yeah, they can go in for the pre-order, get a discount, or they can wait till it comes and pay full price, whatever they want to do.
Awesome.
That's good.
Melissa, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate the insight that you've given us today, and hopefully I'll have a chat to you soon as well to book in that hour to talk about what herbal supplements I can use within my own life to improve it and to address some underlying issues. So expect a call from me soon, and really thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks
so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for giving us another chance too. It was great.
I didn't press record. Did you press record, Joe?
Oh, nah. Of course I did.
Sure. All right, guys. Well, we'll chat to you within next 2 weeks as well. Come back and listen to the podcast again. We come out every second week. And what's new, Joe? What kind of news shall we tell everyone here? We're
if you have
book's coming out in early April. If you've pre-ordered the cookbook, it hits the shores in early April, and then the people who are actually looking after the postage for us said it'll take them around a week to get around 6,500 books out to everyone. So that's a bit crazy, but we'll hopefully get your copy by middle April. And
if you have pre-ordered, make sure you check your email or get the person who ordered for you to check their email, because we just sent out an update yesterday with 2 free recipes from the book and you don't want to miss them.
You'll also be getting an SMS from us closer to the date and an email in case you've changed your address. You'll be able to update your address with us before the shipping takes place. Joe and I are looking at doing a gut health retreat up in the Atherton Tablelands near where Joe lives. The most amazing part of Australia. If you haven't been there, you've got to go. And it's going to be a 3-day retreat in the most beautiful part of this tropical paradise. Is it subtropic? What do you call it? Wet tropics?
It's wet tropics, yes.
Wet tropics. Yeah, it's an incredible part of Australia. If you haven't been there, you're going to love it.
Lots of waterfalls, crater lakes, places to go swimming, wildlife.
It's full of Joe's family, though, so if you don't like Joe and her family, then...
Yeah, watch out. You'll meet them everywhere.
Yeah, no. That's right. Cool. Joe, I'll chat to you soon. And Melissa, thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.